Good morning, folks, and welcome to another Richard Lehman review, or rather, retrospective look back. It's very cold in the house at the moment, and I do look like a Darth Lord. Skywalker. But I'm going to be talking now about, and quite briefly today actually, about book number 20 on my list, which is the very last book on my list where I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think it's okay, perfectly serviceable, nothing special. After this video, there's 19 books left, and they are all either good, very good, or even great books. So I'm going to have a lot of positive things to say about Richard Lehman. Although, interestingly enough, some of his better books do come with massive caveats, which I'll get to when I review them. So I just noticed half my finger skin's missing off my index finger. Very strange. Anyway, rats in the night. The book I'm going to be talking about, number 20, is a book which I've not seen on anybody else's list under any Richard Lehman discussions before, and it's a book called Once Upon a Halloween. And there's a reason why this is not on most people's lists, because this was a very, very limited release book. There are only several hundred copies of this in existence, each one I believe signed by Richard Lehman. It was released in 1999. Like I said, I think there's only 200 or 300 copies of this in the world, but it is a book he wrote, and it is a novel, not a novella, although it's a very short novel. Lehman wrote this book during his sort of resurgence, where he was sort of really coming back with ideas and stories, and I think he did this primarily for the fans. He wanted to write a book to say thank you for his fans sticking by him, and I think to celebrate the fact that he finally started seeing success in America, of all places. And it's also an unusual Lehman book in that it's probably the most tame book Lehman wrote as an actual horror novel. Now, he has wrote a whole series of other books. He's wrote westerns, crime stories, young adult fiction. There are dozens and dozens of Richard Lehman books out there, from terrible books like Dawson City, all the way up to actually surprisingly decent books like Your Secret Admirer or The Secret Admirer. That one is probably the best of his young adult fiction. It's got a very Virginia Andrews sort of twist ending, and it's a decent read actually. But he has wrote a lot of stuff, and this one, I think a lot of people just lump this in his young adult fiction. It's not a young adult fiction. It still contains all the stuff that Lehman's known for, but massively dialed down. There isn't a lot of foul language here. The violence is, by Lehman standards, very tame. The sexual tension is just that, rather than any sort of explicit, particularly graphic scenes. But it's an interesting story, and I won't spoil it on the off chance that you do get to read it, because whilst I appreciate this is a limited book and very hard to find an actual hard copy of, for anything less than silly money, there are avenues you can go to where you can find a digital version of it, which is how I've read it. And I wouldn't want to deprive you of the pleasure of doing so, to read something by Lehman that's a little bit more less excessive, shall we say, by Lehman standards. But it starts off at Halloween, so it's quite an apt one for me putting out today, since we're almost at Halloween, where there's two girls who, I can't remember if they're friends or sisters, or whether they live together or not, but they're in the same house, and there's some trick-or-treating going on, and this guy basically bursts into this house, this young kid, and hides. He's terrified of something that happened at a graveyard, and goes and runs upstairs and hides in the closet, where he watches one of them sort of get undressed later on. That's about as far as the perviness goes in this. And it's revealed very early on that there's a group of sort of fanatics who run around with no clothes on, with weapons. Why they haven't been spotted at Halloween, I don't know. Again, logic wasn't Lehman's strong point. You'd think you'd notice naked people with weapons running around, but it's Halloween, so I guess anything goes. And these people sort of abduct these girls, and this guy manages to initially capture one of the girls in this group of maniacs, although she eventually escapes. There's a family who are also trick-or-treating at the same time, and then there's something else going on. I won't say what else, but it's revealed very early on. Well, not revealed. It's explained very early on that there's something else very strange going on, especially in this house. Which again, layman characters don't behave the normal way they would do. You would normally think if something unseen has happened, you'd get as far away from that house as possible, as quickly as possible, rather than having conversations about it. But that all carries on with that. Like I say, this is a slight book. It's a short book. It's not an excessive book, but it is fun. Maybe it's the fact that it's Halloween, so it sort of fits. Maybe it's the fact that because it's less excessive, it allows you to just concentrate on the action, which is always layman's strong point. But whatever it is, I actually had a decent time with this, and I think that because it's so different to anything else he's done in the sense that it is way less excessive. This is the most accessible horror book Layman's wrote, and because it's quite niche, I wanted to put it at this place because I've never, like I say, in any rankings, seen this book mentioned or even talked about, at any length really. It's not a great book by any means, but it is a curious oddity in Layman's collection that I think deserves this place at the top of the sort of mixed pile of books, which all of the books I've spoke about that aren't bad, this whole sort of 20 plus series have been okay. They've been fun. They've been stuff I'd read, but not necessarily stuff that I'd recommend you go and buy. So that's Once Upon a Halloween, a very odd book that nobody else really talks about, but it's at the top of the mixed bag. And from book number 19 onwards, they're all books that I enjoy. And you'll see in what order I put them. Now, I'm off to go and kill some Jedi. Yeah.